This week on Business Brief, how a local nonprofit arts organization is adjusting after losing its federal arts funding, and a retail incubator providing exposure for local minority-owned startups. Welcome back to Business Brief, Missouri Business Alert's podcast focused on the business news and issues shaping the state. My name is Yashamika Wychuk, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Charlie Warner, and I'm excited to try my hand at hosting.
That's right, Charlie, you're filling in for Noah Grabianski as co-host this week, but you've had stories before on the Business Brief, right?
Yeah, I had a story on last week's show about Syntio Biosciences, a company out of St. Louis, and then this summer I'm reporting on the sports and cannabis business beats for NBA.
Well, it's good to have you in the booth. Should we get to these week's headlines?
Certainly. The Congressional Budget Office projects that President Donald Trump's tax cut package would increase deficits by $2.8 trillion over the next decade. This estimate factors in additional economic effects not included in a previous analysis, which found the Big Beautiful Bill would result in a deficit increase of $2.4 trillion and leave nearly 11 million people without health insurance. The bill was approved in the U.S. House last month and now awaits consideration in the Senate.
Retail sales dropped 0.9% in May, just 2 months after a 1.5% spike in March. The biggest factor in the decline was a steep drop in auto sales. Americans ramped up their spending on vehicles in March to get ahead of a 25% tariff on imported cars and car parts. Sales in many other categories saw decreases as well, which analysts believe may be a result of consumers stocking up before tariffs were enacted.
The Federal Reserve left its benchmark interest rate unchanged in the 4.25 to 4.5% range for the fourth consecutive rate-setting meeting on Wednesday. Officials expect to see weaker economic growth, higher inflation, and increased unemployment in the coming months, yet the central bank is forecasting 2 rate cuts before the end of the year. Fed Chair Jerome Powell said that the interest rate cuts have been on hold recently because of the murkiness surrounding the impact of tariffs, many of which have been on hold since April but could resume soon if the international trade deals are not negotiated.
Japanese firm Nippon Steel finalized its agreement with U.S. Steel to buy the American company for $15 billion on Wednesday, meaning the company will become the fourth largest steelmaker in the world. Per the agreement, the federal government will be given the right to appoint an independent director and to give consent on certain matters, such as the closure of U.S. steel facilities and worker layoffs. Former President Joe Biden blocked the deal as he was leaving office, but President Trump expressed openness to the deal after his election. After announcing the agreement, the company said it will not cut production capacity at its Granite City Works steel mill located in the Metro East St. Louis area.
The athletics department at the University of Missouri spent over $31 million on name, image, and likeness compensation for its athletes over the past year. Nearly 2/3 of that money went towards football players, and 1/4 towards men basketball players. The university ramped up payouts ahead of the effective date of the House versus NCAA legal settlement, which will impose spending limits on schools.
Many rural hospitals in Missouri have stopped offering birthing services due to its expense following a nationwide trend. Officials say that the 24/7 nature of these services make it too costly to continue, leaving many Missouri families more than an hour from the nearest birthing hospital. Since 2020, over 100 rural hospitals around the country have stopped delivering babies, and fewer than 1,000 nationwide still do.
Newly proposed federal funding cuts from the Trump administration could threaten several student success programs, including those offered at the University of Missouri. There are 21,000 Missouri students across the state supported by TRIO Student Support Services, which provide essential support for low-income and first-generation students through academic advising, tutoring, and financial aid. With the looming risk of losing those services, university officials have assured students and staff that the proposed cuts are closely being monitored and that similar resources will still be available through other departments.
Our first story looks at cuts to arts funding. Charlie, I know you reported on this. What'd you find?
I did. As a part of its efforts to slash federal spending, the Trump administration in May announced it was cutting grants from the National Endowment for the Arts.
I do remember hearing about that, actually, and how is it affecting things here in Missouri?
That's exactly what I wanted to find out. So I checked in on the Ragtag Film Society, a Columbia nonprofit that runs a movie theater and a documentary film festival. Here's that story. On a rainy June afternoon at Ragtag Cinema in downtown Columbia, moviegoers file in for a screening of Wes Anderson's latest film, The Phoenician Scheme.
So you're going to be down the hall in Theater 1.
Thank you.
Right on. Welcome to Ragtag. My name is Steve. I'm your projectionist for the afternoon.
In May, multiple organizations in Missouri and hundreds nationally were informed they would not receive the funding awarded to them by the National Endowment for the Arts, a federal agency focused on arts funding and participation. Ragtag Film Society was informed it would no longer receive an NEA grant, making the future of federal funding for the nonprofit unclear. The nonprofit organization runs Ragtag Cinema, an art house movie theater, and organizes the True False Film Fest, a documentary film festival in Columbia. Ragtag Communications Director Emily Edwards says that the grant process can be difficult to understand and hard to navigate as a nonprofit.
And the language around the termination was basically that funding for the NEA has been redistributed, reallocated, and no mention of where it's going, just that the grant they had awarded, or in our case, future awarded, like for the next cycle, would be terminated and no longer aligns with the mission of this current administration.
Education is embedded in Ragtag's typical programming of newly released films. For example, the theater has the Show Me series, which features a monthly free film and community conversation. Edwards says funding cuts could challenge the organization's ability to offer that educational programming.
The lack of foresight of educational access to arts and media, as well as accessibility in general, and making it possible for us not to raise prices on tickets year after year, that kind of thing, I think is what grant funding really helps, is accessibility to our organization.
The future of NEA grant funding is unclear. The grants page on the NEA's website has been updated with a notice regarding the implementation of Executive Order 14168. The order from President Donald Trump is focused on, quote, defending women from gender ideology extremism and restoring biological truth to the federal government. In the meantime, nonprofits are turning to other sources of funds. Megan Davison, Executive Vice President of New York-based fundraising consultancy CCS Fundraising, says philanthropy has gone up or remained level in America for all except 4 years since 1983. Even after tariffs announced in April shook up stock markets, respondents to a study conducted by CCS said they were likely to make donations, indicating that philanthropy will remain a viable option for funding.
Most organizations are realizing that government funding is going to be a less certain bet, and so they're looking to really amp up, all of the infrastructure they can so that they can go out and pursue private philanthropy.
For supporters of the arts like Ragtag patron Mark Sappington, these recent cuts are concerning.
For small groups, less well-funded, or just smaller groups, or dance companies or theater companies, whatever, it's disastrous because it's a big part. And, it just helps the stability of the entire sector. I'm a taxpayer, and it's something that's very important to me. There are many things that I would rather not see our government spend money on.
Ragtag Film Society operates on a budget of roughly $2 million, which is split between the cinema and the film festival. Aside from grants, Ragtag generates revenue through private donations and gifts, ticket sales, and concession sales. Ragtag hosted the biggest event of an ongoing fundraising campaign for the organization's 25th anniversary on June 4th, featuring live music from Columbia band The Park and a screening of the first film Ragtag ever showed, the Christopher Guest mockumentary Waiting for Guffman. The film follows the effort of a small Missouri town to put on a play for its 150th anniversary. Edwards says watching the film after planning the event felt a bit like looking in the mirror.
The reason it was the first movie shown is it's this really incredible celebration of small town community, and especially its small town Missouri community. And I think what I love about that movie, especially in a tangential representation of what it's like to run Ragtag, is it's just, you have to dream really big. And I think what Christopher Guest captures so well, that kind of community spirit, or that DIY need to gather, is actually kind of at the heart of every community, and really speaks to something much, much bigger about how we connect with other people.
The 25th anniversary fundraiser has raised $10,000 so far for the nonprofit. There is an additional fundraiser July 11th at Columbia's Rose Music Hall. Our next story seems to be one of yours, Yasha. What's it about?
Well, last week, I stopped by the Shops at Sharp End. It's a retail incubator located in Columbia, Missouri, that highlights local startups by removing barriers to business ownership often faced by minorities and those from low-income backgrounds.
Oh, really? What's happening there?
Well, it was hosting the Juneteenth Retail Expo, and I spoke to participating vendors about their experiences developing a business. I learned that they spend a lot of time finding opportunities for exposure in the community in order to grow their businesses. Here's that story. On an afternoon in June, the Shops at Sharp End hosted its Juneteenth Retail Expo in downtown Columbia. Customers perused products from local entrepreneurs such as teas, clothes, books, and more. The program director, Tijuana Warwick, says the purpose of the event is to both highlight the Shops at Sharp End and feature Black-owned businesses.
So what I did is I came up with this event to highlight Black businesses in Columbia. You know, the Sharp End was all Black businesses down here back in the 1950s. And so, you know, I wanted the community to see that we are still representing Black businesses here in this program.
According to nonprofit research group the Brookings Institute, employer businesses that are Black-owned made up only 3.3% of all such companies in the U.S. in 2022, with nearly 195,000 businesses. This is an increase from 2.2% in 2017. These figures don't account for Black-owned businesses that do not have employees. Majority Black-owned businesses with workers employed about 1.6 million workers in 2022. However, since 2017, Black female-owned businesses increased by 71.6%. And according to a 2023 Pew Research Center survey, more than 20% of Black adults in the U.S. feel that owning a business is an essential part of their personal definition of financial success. At the Juneteenth Retail Expo, there were 4 outside vendors and 2 in-house businesses with existing shops in the building that participated in the event. Warwick feels that participation at the Sharp End will grow in future years as word continues to spread.
I just think it's a lack of information. Once they learn what we do and what we're about, I think we'll probably get more participants. The more we talk about it, the more they'll be engaged, and the more they learn about the Sharp End, the more they'll want to be a participant in here.
Lauren Jones is one of the vendors who attended the expo. She displayed products for her hair extension brand, Low Lux Tresses, and also promoted her hairstyling business, Styled by Low. Jones has been styling hair since she was 12 years old, and as she got older, she turned it into a career. She's been styling hair in Columbia for 4 years and originally offered her hair extensions to her clients. But a few months ago, she launched a website that allows the general public to buy extensions without having to be a styling client. She looks for nationwide clients for hair extensions. She says that events like the expo help the community get to know small businesses like hers.
It just helps me more so get exposure. I feel like a lot of people know about me with the hairstyling portion, but not a lot of people may know about me selling hair extensions as well. And I know that is kind of a something that's not super exposed in Columbia for like natural hair, like people specializing in that.
Apart from participating in the expo, Jones says that having a presence on social media has helped her business get noticed.
Putting myself out there has been a thing for me. It has helped me like win. Also, I would say content creation through social media platforms like TikTok and Instagram has been a win for me.
Another vendor, Drika Harris of Drika Designs, primarily sold crocheted items at the expo, but she also makes jewelry, clothing, and decor. She's been in business since 2019, but 8 months ago she moved to Columbia from Memphis. The transition presented difficulties for her business as she has had to work to gain exposure and establish a new customer base in Missouri.
I used to get a lot of last minute customers, so with me moving out of town, this money I missed out on, and not really knowing about it here, so it's not that much exposure that I have yet, but just not really making too many sales, I guess, because I'm new here, but it's going to change.
She's recently launched a website this year for her business to allow customers to place online orders, but she hopes to participate in more in-person business expos and pop-up events.
But my main focus right now is pop-up shops. So find as many as I can to get my name out there and meet people, and just, hopefully just get a lot of local customers.
Now it's time for our words of the week. Charlie, what's your word today?
My word today is deregulation.
What regulations are we talking about unraveling?
Well, leaders in the hemp industry are trying to deregulate Missouri's cannabis industry with a new initiative petition. It seeks to repeal the 2022 amendment to Missouri's constitution that legalizes recreational marijuana in the state and replace it with language that gives marijuana and intoxicating hemp products about as much regulation as alcohol and tobacco.
So the state's cannabis industry as we know it could go up in smoke? How are people responding to this?
Some people in the industry don't think it'll turn out well. Andrew Mullins, the executive director of the Missouri Cannabis Trade Association, called it a bait and switch and says that since voters have twice approved cannabis regulations, attempts at rolling it back would be a failure. But the petition still hasn't been finalized, and it will require the group to gather enough signatures to get it on the 2026 ballot.
It sounds like we'll know more in the coming months.
Yasha, what word do you have?
I actually have a phrase. It's a go broke date.
Does that mean someone ran out of money?
Actually, it refers to the date when Medicare and Social Security's trust funds will run out of money to fund services. An annual report shows that Medicare's hospital insurance trust fund is projected to run out of funds in 2033 and Social Security's trust fund in 2034. The go broke dates were moved up by 3 years and 1 year respectively from last year's analysis.
What does that mean for beneficiaries of those programs?
Well, if the go broke date is reached, Medicare will only be able to reimburse 89% of beneficiaries' health care costs. It is less clear what the implications would be for Social Security beneficiaries, but some benefits would continue to be paid.
Can anything be done between now and the go broke date to prevent this from happening?
For now, there is time for Congress to develop legislation aimed at bolstering the programs, though changes to Medicare and Social Security have long been politically unpopular. But amid a push to shrink federal expenditures, President Trump and congressional Republicans have promised not to cut Medicare or Social Security.
Now it's time for our closing thought.
Today's closing thought comes from Drika Harris, owner of Drika Designs, with advice for local small businesses looking to increase their exposure.
Just find pop-up shops. You're always going to find pop-up shops, and also local shops. I hear there are a lot of local shops. They are willing to take in local entrepreneurs, take in their work and sell for them. So I would say look into doing that, and just whatever it is they're doing, just keep doing it. It could be a slow process, but at the same time, slow process is better than no process.
Well, that is all for this week. M33 Project and DeWolf provided the music for this episode. For my co-host, Charlie Warner, producer Noah Grabianski, and editors Kelly DeRook and Michael Stacy, I'm Yasha Mika Wychuk. Thank you for listening.